We have assisting me in the Opani department. Friends to the show. First, one of my, if you will, titans of tumult, Robert Weiner, Democratic strategist, columnist, and former communications director for Clinton Drugs Czar, General Barry McCaffrey. Bob, good to have you back. How are you today?
Good to be with you, Alan. But, geez, what a one-sided batch of clips. Instead of pointing out that there would be a percent increase in employment and there'd be 1.5 million more jobs if the president did get his infrastructure and jobs for America bills passed in the Congress. He's been trying. At least he's got something without just sticking, what up somewhere else. He has a real program, and the Republicans just offer no.
Actually, I'm only referring to the man's own standards and trying to point out that nobody gets to redraw standard lines already violated. Nobody gets to do that. Nobody gets to do that. As a matter of fact, if you will, Derek, share with us one more time clip number 3, just the one with Obama contradicting himself.
I will be held accountable. I've got 4 years.
You're going to know quickly how people feel about what's happening.
That's exactly right. And a year from now, I think people are going to see that we're starting to make some progress, but there's still going to be some pain out there. If I don't have this done in 3 years, then there's going to be a one-term proposition.
Now, we knew from the beginning that our work would take more than 1 year or even one term.
Now, I'm sorry, but playing the words of a person who's contradicting himself is not a one-sided presentation of anything. I'm simply showing both sides of this man's single mouth. We have assisting me also, another old friend of the show, David Almasi, Executive Director for the National Center for Public Policy Research. David, always a pleasure. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Guys, I'll tell you the concern I have, Bob, is right now you have the president pivoting back again on the economy. But my concern is how can we believe...
After you demanded that he did, yes, that's true.
And I should have to demand? It should kind of come of his own volition, should it not?
He's been doing it over and over, but he gives a speech, he says what he's going to do, and suddenly, he's pivoting to the economy. You can't do anything right. He makes that point. The deal he struck today, which should be what we're talking about, is one that actually can take us forward. Tax cuts for corporations for infrastructure jobs. If you guys don't accept that deal, you are crazy.
Yes, but the last time he approached these infrastructure jobs, it turns out that he did not have a significant grasp of governance. Derek, if you wouldn't mind one more time.
Not true,
Derek, if you wouldn't mind, please play that first clip, the Shovel of Obama one.
We've got shovel-ready projects all across the country.
Shovel-ready was not as shovel-ready as we expected.
Okay.
The man's acknowledging it himself that what he initially asserted proved not to be true. David Almasi, what am I missing?
Well, I think we should just let him keep on talking because he keeps on making the argument. I don't even need to talk. We have a president that has been picking winners and losers in this economy, and we've seen that unfortunately, all of his picks have turned out to be the wrong ones. We should let the free market figure things out, and he's dead set against that. He only wants what he wants in there, and that's, in the case of this, we're talking about alternative energy. I'm all for alternative energy. We should all be for alternative energy sources, but they're not working right now. He's insisting that they work. He's insisting that we go along with it. And as a result, we've wasted a lot of that money in the stimulus on boondoggles like Solyndra and all the other alternative energy corporations.
Additionally, Bob, it appears that the Washington Post awarded the president with a couple of Pinocchios because he was caught red-handed fudging the numbers about the Keystone Pipeline. He says, we wouldn't get many jobs, maybe 2,000 at most constructing it, maybe 100 spin-off. He went with Cornell University figures on this, which are actually openly against the Keystone Pipeline. And by doing so, he turned away from his own State Department stats that put the job total more at around 42,000. So isn't it fair to point out that if a guy's been caught contradicting himself or turning his back on his own people as it relates to the facts he's now passing out, the onus is on him and nobody else, Bob Weiner?
I just can't let you get past saying that his program didn't have any success when he reversed the Bush bubble of 10% unemployment, and now it's at 7.5%. He saved the auto industry. Housing starts are up. Health costs are going down. And you are absolutely right on Keystone. I differ with a lot in my party on that. Both sides get two Pinocchios on that. It's not going to be the hundreds of thousands of jobs the Republicans say, and it's not going to be the 2,000 jobs that Obama says. I agree with you on that one, but the other side is off the wall too.
Well, the environmentalists are insisting about all the great damage and risk and harm that would happen should this go through, while the State Department has made it abundantly clear that that is simply not the case. And if memory serves, David Almasi, it also pointed out that of all the options available, the least harmful one is the one currently being applied for. David.
Yeah, we have a president that went out on one occasion and said that we have to have an all-of-the-above strategy. That's when he's looking to court the moderate voters, when he's looking to court the independents. He says we need an all-of-the-above strategy. But then when he gets back into the Oval Office, he's listening to Daryl Hannah and chasing after windmills and looking at solar panels. And at the moment, it sounds like he's going against the Keystone Pipeline.
Yeah, Bob, it appeared.
Alternative energies are fine, but we need to go to what works. We know that fossil fuels work. We know ways to extract minerals and oil in a safe way, and we just need to get it to the people. He is not willing to do that, but he is willing to put a turbine in your backyard if you want to.
Bob?
Well, I've always wanted to listen to Daryl Hannah, and not so much anymore, however, but... But let me, no, you've got a point on Keystone. It's probably a good thing in moderate.
Actually, the unions are very supportive of it as well, Bob. The unions are big-time supporters of Keystone, as they are also apparently now not so big in their support for Obamacare. Did you find it surprising? I want to ask you, Bob Weiner, were you surprised? Were you surprised?
You can't just put all your eggs into Keystone. It's not going to save us for jobs.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Here's Alan Nathan, the militant moderate. Once again, this is the oasis for those who have an aversion to the left, right, black, white, two-dimensional approach. This is some of the sights and sounds going on as we see this mayoral race unfold in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. But what you were initially listening to was none other than Eliot Spitzer, the disgraced former governor of New York, who's now, of course, in a campaign of his own. He admitted that he would not vote for Anthony Weiner in the New York City mayoral race, but only after being super pressed by MSNBC host Chris Matthews. Following that, you hear Anthony Weiner respond to the general movement to have him walk out of the race, leave the race. He says he will not be driven out of the race. He's not going to bother listening to people who essentially don't live in New York City and won't vote for anybody there anyway. And then finally you heard retired school teacher Peg Brunda scolding Anthony Weiner while he's on the campaign trail in Staten Island. I think it was yesterday. And you heard what he said. She said, quote, "If I had conducted myself in the manner in which you conducted yours, my job would have been gone." All right, let's get to our cast of characters today, old friends of the show. First, one of my titans of tumult, Bob Weiner, Democratic strategist, columnist, former communications director for Clinton drug czar General Barry McCaffrey. He's usually joined by Amy Ridenour, who is the CEO of the National Center for Public Policy Research. She's a bit under the weather. So in her stead, we have another old friend of the show, David Almasi, executive director of that same august organization, National Center for Public Policy Research. Gentlemen, thank you both. Bob, let's go to you first because, again, he is, after all, your cousin.
Yeah.
So...
I take such deep pride in my fourth cousin.
Oh, now it's the fourth. You know, David, I got to tell you something, buddy. Before this man ran into all his troubles and he had some notoriety in the Democratic Party as one of the lions of the left on Capitol Hill, Bob Weiner was always quite open with this kinship, with this relation of his. But now all of a sudden, the guy who once was his cousin has now become his fourth cousin.
Our whole family is disowned. Look, whether it's Bill Clinton to Arnold Schwarzenegger or the Appalachian Mountain Trail guy, this behavior is disgusting. I do not understand, having had a life in politics and government, how these people don't understand that you can keep your control on yourself while you're doing something that's so important and so wonderful for the people that you serve. I don't understand how they screw it up.
But what about Eliot Spitzer?
Yeah,
acting
well,
as if he's got any moral authority whatsoever to condemn Bob. I mean, is this the old classic pot meet kettle?
Well, Eliot is a brilliant financial guy. He's incredible on going after Wall Street and essentially prosecuting the bad guys and bringing out the truth and the facts. His, at least, was a prostitute, not some perverted thing that Weiner did.
Yeah, but this guy used public funds to facilitate his assignations.
Well, both of them did. Weiner used computers and Spitzer used money, I guess. And actually, I don't know that Spitzer used money. I haven't seen or heard that that's real. I think he just he's
the moment he used
the
moment he used office assets to help acquire his company.
I'm not sure that he did, but the point is.
But you would agree that Elliot Spitzer has no moral authority doing this, right?
But he has redeeming qualities, just like Bill Clinton did. The guy is so good at what he does that you can vote for him. Weiner just seems like an ego trip, as Chris Matthews, you mentioned him before, said, going from one form of exhibitionism to another. That's what it seems to be therapy for him to run for mayor. That's not our job to help him that way.
David, on this one, as it turns out, and we were talking about this just a little earlier, there was this poll that came out, and it's a pretty strong one because this is surveying like 18,000 women versus the usual 1,000 plus that most polls go by, and actually even from the 1,000, they're usually pretty correct when they handle it properly. But you've got a multitude of publications out there reporting that apparently this website, seekingarrangement.com, surveyed about 18,000 of its female membership, and the poll apparently found that 63% of women in all age brackets actually approve of Weiner as the future mayor of New York City. The survey additionally found that like 78% of those between ages 18 and 26 were especially supportive. I can't help but to think that the numbers would be even higher if the guy didn't have the cosmetic features of an anteater. Your take?
Well, you have to remember, this is a website called seekingarrangement.com, and I went and looked it up. It is, and I've heard commercials for it before, it's looking for sugar daddies. It's women who are looking for sugar daddies. So Anthony Weiner, probably, yeah, his looks are the only thing unappealing to these people. These are women who want money, who want power, who want things. They don't necessarily want a good politician. But it does, I think, just kind of point to the problems with our society right now, that we actually do have something like seekingarrangement.com that's going out and asking people their political opinions, and that it's so low, it's so bottom-feeding that Anthony Weiner can find support. We need to – I was just listening this morning on Howard Stern. They had one of the new girls who was with Weiner. She said within a year – it was about a year after – he resigned from office, that he contacted her out of the blue. She had sent him a note early on saying, I'm really saddened by what you did. I'm a liberal. How could you do this to me? He sent her a note back a year later saying, I'm sorry I let you down. By the next day, she reported this morning in this interview, he was sending her notes saying, what do you look like? Send me a photo. Well, the guy's habitual. He's got a serious problem. I mean, serious psychological problem. And apparently none of the therapy worked, because a year later there he was on the verge of starting a mayoral campaign doing the exact same thing that got him in trouble in the first place.
Let me get at this a little bit, because
go ahead, Bob.
I think it's just very, very sad, but it's also true. The cable people and Matthews and others were dumbfounded when they realized that there are millions of kids that actually do sexting, that it's a normal thing for millions and millions of kids. The very fact that my colleague here on the show today talks about Howard Stern, and he has a listenership and a viewership when he had TV, as he does. There is a huge following, which is why Weiner only fell from 25 to 16 and still is in striking distance.
Yeah.
And that is what's shocking to me, is that, and I think we've all learned, that this is not an unacceptable thing for kids to do. That's unbelievable to me that parents don't find ways to correct that.
Well, until they come up with the software that can somehow prove itself to be breach-proof by the very kids who usually have a lot more on the ball than the parents trying to stop them, maybe then you'll see a shift. Now, the New York Post and others have been reporting, Bob, stick with you for a bit here, that the Clintons are quite angry over the Weiners, apparently subtly comparing themselves to the former First Family. They were especially upset over this stand by your man similarity that so many have drawn following Uma Abedin's declaration of forgiveness. What can Hillary do short of paying the guy off?
Well, the Clintons have been upset by Wieners for years. And it's a real problem, because Huma is such a wonderful person, and she's got herself in a box between a rock and a hard place, because she still runs Hillary's Washington office now, and up on Connecticut Avenue, in the one that's getting Hillary set for what I believe will be a run for president. Huma cannot do that and be a lightning rod with Anthony Weiner at the same time. So of course they are livid about it, and that's got to be solved. And I don't know what the resolution is going to be until this race is over and Weiner's out of it. But Hillary, Huma, as you know, Weiner's wife, was Chelsea's keeper and has been Hillary's body person. Is responsible for the fluid flow of Hillary's office, and she's wearing two hats now, and one of them is really unacceptable.
Quick question on the Palestinian-Israeli peace process undergoing.
Switching subjects.
Yeah, just switching up because I'm looking at the clock. I have to segue out of one or the other. I remember the president was saying, some months ago that, young Israelis need to implore their leaders to seek peace while the Palestinians also have to accept Israel's right to exist. Nice words. But there is a spectacular flaw in the argument holding that the real challenge is getting Israel to this negotiation table, as has just happened, because I'm thinking the more dispositive fact is that you can't cut a two-party deal with only 1.5 sides in attendance. It takes two. And to you, David, as long as Ismail Haniyeh of Hamas is not representing the other side of the table along with Mahmoud Abbas, no deal is really reciprocally enforceable, is it?
No, and I don't think that there's any deal to be had in the first place, because the only deal is that they either go back to the 67 borders or get these Jews out of the whole area entirely, and that's not going to happen.
Bob, just 10 seconds. Am I wrong in saying that you can't have a two-party deal with only 1.5 sides in attendance?
At least Kerry is starting to get people talking. That's progress.